HorrorDeconstruction.
What's up, everybody? It's the HorrorDeconstruction. You'll find us on Instagram, Facebook, but most likely on YouTube. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon. Hit that thumbs up. Let people know that you like this show. I'm Comp, your host for today's solo deconstruction in the month of October for our 31 films. And today we're talking Demonic 2021. A young woman unleashes terrifying demons when supernatural forces at the root of a decades-old rift between mother and daughter are ruthlessly revealed. This will be a spoiler episode, directed by and written by Neil Blomkamp, starring Carly Pope, Chris William Martin, and Michael J. Rogers, and a whole bunch of other people. So, first off, I should say, sheesh, yikes. What was Neil Blomkamp thinking? This was really a disappointment for me with this, because I actually do like Neil Blomkamp's style. His first three films obviously sort of look alike and sound alike, and that's because of the heavy South African influence, obviously, which are great. But they sort of have this steampunk / cyberpunk science fiction feel to them. Obviously, if you know District 9, Elysium, and then also Chappie. I actually like them. Obviously, District 9 is to the best of them. And I remember the first time I saw that film, I had walked into a screening of it, and I was just like, I couldn't believe how great it was. As in, it felt very much so like an early Peter Jackson film, and that's obviously why he produced that film. But anyway, Neil Blomkamp hasn't really had hits because, unfortunately, a lot of people do not give a shit about science fiction when it's in a theater. When it's on TV, they'll watch it. When it's in theaters, they don't give two flying craps about it, which is unfortunate. That's why we don't get that many science fiction films. That's why we see Blade Runner 2049. It makes no money, and I think it's a beautiful, wonderful film. Nobody sees it, so we'll see what happens with Dune. But anyway, Demonic, this was his take on horror, and I was very excited to see Neil Blomkamp take on horror films. I was upset that he wasn't able to do his Alien 5 film. Who knows? It would be nice. I don't know, after they see this movie, they might be like, no, you saw that movie, Demonic? No way. But I was super into watching this. Having seen the trailer, and they had this weird, obviously, science fiction element to it. I thought the film was about, a demon overtaking AI and corrupting people and destroying them, and that's not the case. So it's sort of an unfortunate train of thought that I had with this film. But let's get into some of that idea. So there's this young lady, obviously, played by Carly Pope. She's playing Carly, and we find out that she's had issues with her mother. We find out later on that her mother actually was, we find out later that she was possessed by some sort of demonic entity and burnt down a nursing home, killing 21 people, and she went to some other location and killed 4 people, poisoned the food of 4 people there. And, anyway, so she is put into this virtual reality system, and it's to speak to her mother, because her mother's the only one that would speak to her, and these people at this very shady science fiction style building say they need her help. And Carly's aloof. We don't know about her past. We just know that she has 2 friends. There's this one guy named Martin, who I guess was her friend when they were younger. They cut him out of her life. She has her other best friend, Sam, played by Candice McClure. And anyway, so she gets into this virtual. This is the best part of the film, obviously, because it's science fiction. Neil Blomkamp, I don't know what happened with this movie. My friend said maybe because it was restrictions through filming that he screwed up, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen some restricted horror films, like Host was done pretty well, and that was just a couple screens on a computer. And in this one, like, they obviously had a budget to do some stuff with it, but I don't know what he was thinking. Because the science fiction stuff is great in this movie. Like, it looks cool. Like, when she jumps into this virtual reality world, which is built on her mother's thought processes. Her mother, played by Natalie Bolt, who plays Angela. It looks like an isometric sort of 3/4 video game that you'd play back in the 80s to the 90s and stuff like that. Like think of Gauntlet, stuff like that. That's really dating it, or any of those sort of strategic games. It looks like that. It looks cool, and like the graphics aren't fully realized. So when a character walks through, you can see on the back of their head, you can see the front of their face. So it's that nice attention to detail that has that really cool look to it. I would have preferred the whole movie was like this, but whatever. I guess people would have probably got annoyed by the look of it. But so anyway, she's trying to have this conversation with her mother, and her mother's like, tells her to get the hell out of there. So we were like, what's going on? Why did the mother ask for this? And obviously this leads to this and that, and then there's haunting weirdness going on in her and Carly's character having this breakdown because she couldn't accept what her mother did. And we eventually find that the mother is possessed, and that demon is trying to reach to the daughter through this video game world or something like this virtual world. And we don't really see that we only see that virtual world maybe 3 times in very short spurts throughout this movie, and that's very unfortunate because I'd rather seen that, like, because the rest of it is probably one of the most sloppiest filmed horror films I've seen in a while. As in that, now I understand all this time. People complain about the same shit happening in horror movies, the same tropes happening over and over, and Neil Blomkamp has done every opposite. And I can understand why it would be interesting to shoot a horror film differently than a horror film looks, but it looks like he's shot this horror film thinking he knew what a horror film looked like, but he forgot how to actually film a horror film and have intense and scary scenes like that. There's scenes that are intense, like in Chappie, or like with the heroes, you're afraid for them, or even District 9 or even Elysium, but none of that's here because it's so laughably done, and it's like sucks because Neil Blomkamp's obviously a very good director, but like even the nightmare scene, there's a nightmare scene in this film where the monster, like earlier on when she goes in the digital world, we see the monster is a sort of like 8-foot bird creature that's supposed to represent a demon or something like that, and the monster looks great, but it looks like a science fiction creature. It doesn't look like a horror monster creature, which is whatever. Either way, it's still a great design, and anything with that monster looks cool in it, but it's not utilized well enough. And anyway, so there's a nightmare scene with her best friend, and it's just so laughably bad because I think they're trying to scare. Obviously, it's a horror film; it's supposed to scare you. But the way that the way that the film is constructed and the way it looks like it's shot like a science fiction movie, and not like an alien science fiction movie. It's shot like fucking like Starship Troopers, which is a great movie. You know what I mean? It's shot as a matter of fact type of film. And I was talking to my friend about how Exorcist was filmed as a drama, but it's still, you leaned on a little bit of horror trope visually to do some cool stuff, and this doesn't have it at all because it's so ridiculous, and it feels like the movie is partially improv or something like that, because there's like repeating of lines and lots of cursing that doesn't seem like necessary. I'm sure I would curse too if I was in this situation, God forbid, but it's like, it's so strange that like the way it's all put together is so dumb. And then there's this weird element of that the church is sending cyber priests to run and find the demons online so they can locate them. It's so fucking stupid. Like, and then there's like an element of, oh, here's this 10,000-year-old weapon. Here, you can use this. And this is like within the last 15 minutes of the movie, and you're like, I understand they showed a photo of this thing earlier in the film, but they didn't discuss it or talk anything about this supposedly mystical weapon. And suddenly, okay, here it goes. It's like you walked into like if you're in a video game and you walked into the right room by accident and they gave you a fucking missile launcher or something like that to fight the monster. So it leads to this whole fucking ridiculous finale fighting the creature, and it's just like, oh man. They tried to do like, because they obviously gave this element of techno priests. I'm calling it techno priests, but it's like priests that are essentially like Navy SEAL priests that are going in with guns. You don't see what happens to them. You see what happens after to them. So you're like, you mean you cut out the Navy SEAL priests doing cool shit to see the aftermath because it's so spooky? Like, get the hell out of here. And I could only say the good things were obviously the creature itself, the digital effects, the poor actress. I'm sure these people felt ridiculous saying these lines because there was nothing about these. Like there's a guy who, it was like I had a flashback to Freddy vs. Jason where the motherfuckers figured out the problem. Teenagers figured out the problem in the movie. Like they were like, oh yeah, Jason is Freddy's controlling Jason to kill us. I was like, who the fuck would even think of that? Like, how would you even know to come up with that idea? But in this, there's a guy who spouts off the exposition and says everything that's happening in the film about like half an hour into it. So you're like, okay, so that's what's gonna happen with the movie. It's like, hey, I just randomly was going online because it's the friend Martin. He's like, well, you know when you guys shunned me and I was telling you all this shit was happening? Well, this is true. Well, there's techno priests and there's demons that come after you, and you're like, what the fuck? How does this guy just find this online? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, it leads to a ridiculous sort of non-ending when she's fighting this Birdman or something like that. They did a really cool effect when she's using her. She finds a pair of night goggles and stuff like that, and there's a really cool visual of the monster leaving somebody's body, and that was great. That was dope. That was like the last good thing in the movie, but the rest of it is just really bad. And I knew there was like lukewarm reviews to it, but I didn't think it was gonna be as stupid as this. Like it's just like it's a real screw job by the director, and I'm like, oh man, Neil Blomkamp, what are you thinking? Stick more aliens and robots in these movies, because I don't know what the hell you were thinking making this movie. So I don't know what happened in the process of making this movie. Obviously, Blomkamp is a good director, so it's obviously in the writing a horror film and just not paying attention to what makes a horror film scary that he fucked this up. So I would give this movie a 4. As a Neil Blomkamp fan, it's a 2. It's a 1. Just for the science fiction stuff, it's fine. But as a horror film itself, it's a 4 out of 10. Telling somebody that you're going to show them a magic trick, and you double backwards and attack them with a bird mask on. And with that, this has been the Horror Deconstruction.